All right. Can you just start real quick once again? Thank you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Well, my name is Missy Hasting, and I've been involved with Music Portland for a few years and helped to design the original Echo Fund, kind of from a technical standpoint, but also just trying to figure out how to create an application that was really accessible so that we could get as many people interested in and applying for these grants because there aren't a ton of grants for people in the music, especially independent music space here in Portland. And I was just saying that Renee is absolutely awesome, and she has come in and really improved this dramatically. So thanks, Renee, because it's awesome. But I wanted to just share a little because I'm a working musician who also is a I do grant writing for my day job to kind of help pay the bills that don't get paid through music. And so I wanted to just create a little presentation that maybe gives you some tips on how to craft a successful grant application, and it might perhaps extend into other opportunities. I know, for example, that we have the Holler Fund here in town that opens every once in a bit, and they provide project funding for musicians and people in the music industry too. So hopefully this will be helpful to you. And I just thought maybe I'd share some of that to help you. Um, if you haven't already taken a look at the platform that we're using for the grant application, um, eh, hopefully everybody has. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Holler Fund is invite only. Okay, that's changed. Sorry about that. But if you haven't yet looked at Good Grants, I would encourage you, even while we're doing this, to kind of open it up and take a look at that platform. If you haven't yet created an account with Good Grants, it's free, but that'll be the way that you'll be able to get into that system and kind of take a look around at the application. And Renee will probably drop that link into the chat. Um, the application has been simplified, but perhaps we could just share real quickly that there are a few limitations on who can apply. And I know that you've already done one session on this, right, Renee, that sort of explains to people who can apply and what we're funding this
Yeah.
round. But
Yes.
just to quickly repeat that, this is project funding, and you'll see in the opening page to the grant application that you should be involved in music and be a musician in the three zip codes that sort of are the Portland metro area. And one thing that has changed from past years is that this round does not fund people who work and live in Vancouver. So this is going to be for Portland metro region musicians. And Renee has dropped that link into the chat. So feel free to take a look at that. Renee, would you like to share just briefly the categories that we're funding for this particular round?
Sure. You can pick one of four categories. That's a bit of a change from last year, too. We used to just let it be a little bit like, let's throw something at the wall, and it can be apply for like multiple things at once. But it makes more sense to pick a category. You can choose promotion, production, resources, or what am I forgetting off the top of my head here? Production, promotion, distribution, or resources. And I can go ahead and copy and paste that into the chat as well so you can see what that all entails. So,
So what
production, yeah, did you want me to go through that at all? Or I think we,
I don't think so, but if anyone has any questions about those categories, hold that and or drop that into the chat, and we'll make sure that we answer any questions about it. But note that there is one difference, at least in the past, and it is that we're no longer funding merch. So merch is not a category in there, and that had been in the past. So if you've applied in the past, just note that that's one change. The second change would be the regional base within which we're working this time. And that has a lot to do with the fact that this comes from this funding comes from City of Portland
Mhm.
funding. And so that's one of the reasons why it's limited to Portland Metro.
And
But
just to clarify, City of Portland is a huge chunk of the funding. We get other parts of the funding from Portland Music Month as well, but it still all comes from Portland. So
and then Jackie brings up a good question, which is that the application says one or more, but it sounds like you would prefer just one, correct? That was Jackie's
that
question.
might be just an error because of last year. And thank you for pointing that out. It should just be one. Yes, I will update that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you, Jackie. All right, so I am going to move into into just some tips on writing grants. Just a show of hands. Give me a hands up or a thumbs up if you have written a grant application in the past. Great, Lana. Awesome. So, but there are quite a few people who haven't, and this presentation is a little bit geared towards some of the intimidating thoughts that we have about writing um, grants. So that's what I'm going to be focused on. So, Renee, would you be able to share the presentation?
Yes, just one moment.
And if you
All
want me
right.
to, I can.
Oh, no, no worries. I was just making that quick change. Thanks for that edit. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen here. And just to say, this is an application that's been submitted. It's a sample application that I filled out just to make sure that you could see what it looked like filled out for my band Major Tomboys. So it was just to give you guys an example to look at. So go ahead, Missy.
Great. Yeah, and we may come back to that as we do this presentation because I'd love for you to see after we've talked about how to get there to see what it looks like fully complete. All right. So now we want to move to let's move over to the presentation.
Okay. Oh, gotcha. Hold on one second. Sorry. Give me a moment.
I'm I'm really trying to do this outside because my house is really dark, but there may be crows, you guys. Hopefully, hopefully it won't be too loud, but I asked them if they would cooperate with me. They've been super loud today, but I love it.
Okay, I'm trying to do, let's see, sharing the presentation here and
Exactly, Megan.
now full screen here.
All right, great.
Does everyone see that full screen then?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
and we'll just move right straight to the next slide. So, first things first, I want to just walk through some tips on how to get your application started and really rolling. And another thing about my background is I've spent a lot of time helping first-time novelists and writers self-publish books. And so, some of these strategies that I'm giving you are strategies that we use to try to unlock people's capacity to get their thoughts through their fingers and onto the page. So I feel like it's valuable because a lot of this involves just strange blocks and intimidation that are involved in writing. So, but the first thing to remember when you're writing a grant is you always, or I would suggest that you always create a separate document or a separate space where you can write. I use Google Docs because it also lets me share with other people really easily, and it lets people kind of interact. It's got a super easy interface for letting other people kind of go in and make suggestions and you can accept those or whatever. But it's the point of not being on good grants when you're writing your narrative is it's an unfamiliar space for most people. I mean, good grants is not, I don't know any grant funder in town that uses good grants except for us. Um, so it's likely that you've never used that before unless you've applied for an Echo Fund grant. And it's also a lot easier to make changes and edits after you've let other people look at your what you've written. So I strongly encourage you to create a separate document. And I'll tell you a little thing. There are times when I'm writing really complicated grants where I move over to this really old space for me. You're going to laugh because I think everybody in the room is probably younger than me, but I have draft function in Yahoo Mail. And sometimes if you could go back to the previous slide, that would be awesome.
Sorry, that was an
Um,
accident.
oh, no problem. Um, but I sometimes, if I'm really stuck, I go into this really familiar space that I used to use like 15 years ago. And for some reason, it's familiar to me. And then I can just like start writing and not stop. And then take that and put it over to where I need it. But wherever you feel most comfortable writing, that is one of the most important little tricks that I could suggest to you is that you make sure you're in a space where you've already done some writing. Maybe it's where you write emails, maybe it's where you write letters to your mom or whatever, but try to find that space. Second, go into Good Grants and just copy and paste the questions into your draft document. Bold those questions or whatever so you can tell where they are. And then that becomes the template for you to begin to work to relatively quickly get your application written. Um, and then I would suggest that you wait until the very last step to dump your narrative. Narrative meaning uh, answers that are your words. There is also a budget, and we'll talk about the budget later. But for right now, we're talking about just being able to clearly state what it is you want to do, why, and then laying that out for the reviewers. Next slide. So we want to start very simply. And the first thing we do when we have a draft document and the questions have been dumped in there is at the very top, try giving this a very quick, this is going to sound trite, but it really works. Give it a quick who, what, when, where, and why really quickly and do it super fast. So, an example would be my band's name is Mojo Holler. So, I want to say that Mojo Holler wants to create a music video. We want to film it in November of this year in a studio called Page Street Sound Lab in North Portland. And the reason I want to do that is because I want more visibility so I can get better bookings for my band. Okay, that that example, you should have that level of clarity about what it is that you want Echo Fund to give you in terms of funding. So work on simplifying this down to its most basic level, and then work from that. And that's a really easy way to build a grant application. So next slide. If you can't, I say if you can't say it 3 times fast, then you might lack clarity. And I wanted to spend a little time talking about that because, first of all, lack of clarity is not an indicator of a bad idea. It's not an indicator of a lot of things that we might assume. Um, that we don't know what we're doing or we don't know how to say what we're doing. It's not really an indicator of that. It can indicate complexity. It can indicate that you're highly creative and what you're trying to do is complex and original and weird and wonderful. And it is those types of things that are really appealing to reviewers when they see something that is different. So, but what I've noticed about people when they try to write is because there's this lack of initial clarity about how to say what you want to do, that you get stuck and you stop and you don't finish the application. So, next slide.
Mhm.
So, So one of the reasons that we get stuck and we have that lack of clarity, and I didn't know a better. I'm very Southern, if you haven't noticed from my my accent, but I didn't know a better word for this, but it really is like shame. It's like, oh, I don't know enough, or I don't have enough experience to be asking other people to help me know how to make a music video or to produce an album. Or it could be that I'm just intimidated by the process. Maybe I don't like the way that I write. Maybe I feel I'm an imposter and that Renee is a real musician, but I, Missy, am just this like amateur musician. Those are the types of things that can kind of get us stuck. And so I wanted to give you some tricks, and let me know if I'm talking too fast or anything, but I'm trying to roll through this so we can open it up to questions. So let me know though if I'm rushing through. One of the tricks is some just changing the way you think. And one is that you have to recognize the truth that literally almost nobody knows how to write a grant. It's a highly specialized thing. Um, it's super boring. Writing grants for a living for me has a lot to do with like kind of being like a librarian, and I go in and like help nonprofits do this, and it's it's hard no matter how many years I've been doing it because everybody keeps their information in different spaces. So know that nobody knows how to write a grant, and the reviewers know that as well. Second, every single thing that you want to do in terms of writing a grant is doable if you break it into small pieces and if you ask for help. And most people need to ask for some help. You need other people to give input. We'll talk about that in a moment. Next, perfection is boring. I can't say that enough. I have participated as a grant reviewer for RAC, and I've also done quite a bit with Music Portland's grant program and others. And um, it's having it perfect isn't necessarily the greatest thing in the world. A lot of reviewers find it appealing when we identify with you and when you speak to something that like really resonates with me. Another thing about Music Portland's reviewers is they're all people that are musicians, people involved in the music ecosystem locally, and they're people like you. So another tip I have is to don't, especially at the very beginning, don't think that you need to be talking up to people, which is this idea that, oh, thank you, have money, let me talk to you in a way that you don't have to do that. Be yourself because they are like you and they will recognize you when you talk like yourself. So keep that in mind. It doesn't mean that like spell check isn't your friend or that you don't need input from other people, but definitely don't don't get into any kind of mode where you think that anybody is better than you, because you are valuable. And the whole point of this program is to empower independent musicians to begin to sense your own value and understand that you have worth, and it's worthy of a grant. You're worthy, and your work is worthy of being funded. Next slide.
I wanted to say real quick, add to what you said about spell check is your friend. Yes, that's true. However, I do want to add, and Missy knows this as well, that we are not super concerned if about like grammar and that kind of perfection either. We want people who may not be used to this, may not have English as a first language to be able to apply, and we don't want people to feel like that's some sort of barrier for us. So just letting you know that. So
Yeah.
and
And
thanks.
and that's a whole discussion about, we get really hung up on the written word, which is a very much a white Western culture approach to communicating. And so really important. Thank you for pointing that out. And there are also other ways, right, Renee, that people can submit videos and some other ways to kind of communicate who you are. Is that going to
Yeah,
happen this year?
yeah, nobody has reached out so far about that, but if anyone does, really need some accommodations with this application, you know, we may not be able to accommodate everything, but please reach out. We want you to be able to be successful at that. And so talk to us if there's any part of this that is difficult for you. So
Yeah.
reach out and I'll put my, after we have this discussion, I'll put my email in the chat too, so you can contact me if you need to. So.
Awesome. Okay, real quickly, make sure to create the time and space for this. Don't wait till the last minute. That really causes. I'm saying don't wait till the last minute because it creates more stress for you. Um, you can wait till the last minute, but it makes it harder. You want to remember to. I put a little pithy. You can ask for these slides later, but I put a pithy quote because I like Joyce Carol Oates, and she says, like, the biggest enemy of the writer is interruptions, and the interruptions are nearly always by the people and things we love the most. But loving yourself can one of the ways you can do that is by setting aside some space and time, and we're gonna it just really hitting small pieces of it is a lot better. It's sort of like learning to play guitar. It's better if you practice 10 minutes a day every day than an hour and a half once every 3 months. I mean, you're gonna get more done by just doing it in small spurts. And next slide. So I'm gonna give you just this great trick. This is a country trick, but I promise you it works. It's the 10-minute trick. I use this to clean my house. I do it all for all kinds of stuff, but the 10-minute trick with writing really works. So take your who, what, when, where, why that you begin your when you begin your application, and just keep your phone near you and set a 2-minute timer and build on who. So that we used an example on slide 3 of the who, what, when, where, why for me would be who, my band, it's Mojo Holler, but who's in the band? So I spend 2 minutes and I write without picking it, like without stopping. I write for 2 straight minutes on who it is. Who is my band? Who are my band members? What do they play? Where do they come from? If I can crank all that out in 2 minutes, great. And then I move on and do that with all the others. And you end up spending 2 minutes and you've written for 10 minutes and you have built this. You've unstuck yourself and you have built something that you can work from. Um, Stop at 2 minutes and move on so that you're actually creating like you're don't get stuck in one section of your application is what I'm saying. It's better for you to just fill in little pieces. If you ever get stuck, move on to something. Don't stay stuck for very long on a grant. Just move forward and write something that you do know the answer to because the stuck space will come to you when it's supposed to. Next slide. And then also like I just wanted to like say, like writing when you're hungry or hangry or stoned or whatever, like it often doesn't work and it can stop us. And so I just wanted to encourage you, like, don't stop when you're stumped and unless it really works for you, try to write at a time when you're like hydrated and fed. I go outside. Outside is my space where if I'm really stuck, I just go outside. Next slide. Okay. So now we're going to just kind of move into it. So on Good Grants, and in just a moment, I'm going to ask Renee to pull up her application so that we can take a look at it. But let's talk about this. So you've created a draft, you've gotten unstuck, and you have something that you can then begin to work with. I do think spell check is your friend, and I agree. Like nobody is going to count points off, but you do want to be appealing. So do a quick edit, but really two things seem to work really well with grant writing. One is for you to go back and read it as though you're a reviewer and ask yourself if what you're saying is appealing. But even more so is to ask someone that has just enough knowledge about what you're doing. I mean, it could be your mom if your mom really knows, what you're up to. But it would be better if you could find someone in this space who does music and understands some of the terminology to be able to just read it. And the key for that is not and not for them to brutally, copy edit, although that can be helpful. But what you really want is you need them to honestly tell, yeah, like a band member, Brendan, perfect. Um, but what you really want is for someone to honestly tell you if something doesn't make sense. And because a lot of times we think that everybody gets it when I say, "Oh, I want to buy this piece of equipment that's going to really help up my game," but then someone else who even they might be a member of your band and they don't quite understand how that translates into upping your game. There are lots of different reasons why people don't understand things, but having someone else and encouraging them as they read it, is there anything that you didn't understand? And that is the piece that you should rework and edit. And as people, when we're writing, especially about things like this, which are very intimate and personal, like your art, you really do want to make sure that you've got someone that loves you, but also has enough honesty to tell you, like, I don't really get it. Then, when you've worked through that process, you can dump your edited responses into the Good Grants application. And we'll talk about budget and come back to this slide in a moment. But Renee, would you be able to share your application so that we can just take a look at
Sure
what you
thing.
did?
Yeah, give me a moment. Oh yeah, I've got it right here. Okay. So I have, this is all, the first page is going to be mostly our guidelines here, except for just confirming that you are an artist. So I'm going to go into the applicant information, the second section here.
So, can you enlarge the short bio?
Let me see if I can. Does that help to kind of do that like
Yeah.
this? Okay.
So, if you take a look at Renee's short bio, we've really you'll find this year if you've applied in the past, there's a limit on the number of characters and words, and we're trying to really get things to be concise.
Mhm.
But the short bio, this is a really good example of when we were talking about building on your who. Once you have built on your who and the who, what, when, where, why, this will become your bio. And you may have already, I mean, a lot of people have written their bio, but I would encourage you to kind of go back and look at it. And if you notice, she's described their name, what makes them unique, and what they do all in the first sentence. So we know that it's Major Tomboys. We know that they're from Portland. We know they're all femme and that they're a David Bowie tribute band. And then she goes on to kind of build on that who, and then she adds a little bit of some praise that they have received, and then kind of talks about their scope. But that's a really nice example of a short bio. It could even be shorter than that and be perfectly fine. But how many words is that?
167. So you can do up
167.
to 200, but don't feel like in any part of this that you have to fill the space. Just have the information you need. Don't feel like you have to fill the words count. So,
Yeah. But words are your friend. So if you've got things to say, this is a space where you can, brag about yourself. And then I don't think there's anything left on this page that I wanted to show them, but I definitely want to move into that project description
okay.
tab. All right.
Got the
So,
category.
we had a question in the chat about what if your project fits into two categories, for example, recording and promoting an album. So, we have found things to be excessively complicated in being able to award and review grant applications that are two different sections like that. So this year, we're asking that you pick one. So, production, you can see, and who asked that question? Brendan.
Miss Brendan, yeah.
So Brendan, if you chose production, which is tracking that sort of thing, it could be that your I'm assuming your budget for both of those would be more than $5,000, but I would pick the category that provides you with the most potential funding.
Okay.
But I'll let Renee also speak to that. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think whatever your category is, or if you're having trouble deciding which one, or you need, you really need more help in the production field, in that category, then go with that one. And inevitably, like, sometimes when you're doing production, there might be like a piece of equipment you need for that production. But I mean, keep in mind, and we said this in the info session, that we want you to use local vendors. We don't want you to do this project yourself. We're paying, you a grant fund to hire people to get you a professional product. And choosing local vendors is part of the scoring. So I'm just using that as an example, as there might be a little bit of part of your budget that might not fall squarely into production, but as long as your project is mostly in production, figure out which one of those categories fits best and do your best to stay within that category. So,
All right. Could you? Oh, okay, great.
yeah,
So scroll down just a little bit more and let's take a look at your full project description.
sure.
So tell us quickly, can you summarize your project?
Yeah, I have, let's see, I did this very quickly as an example. So let's see what we do. We want to create a promo reel to elevate the types of gigs we're able to play. By the way, this is just an example. I'm not really applying. So, um, we want to create a promo reel to elevate the types of gigs we want to play. And part of that is to hire a film crew to come to one of our shows to get footage, and then get a board recording to create a professional video that we can design a promo reel around. So,
So the way that, so Renee, could you scroll down just a tiny bit more?
hmm
So the way that you have described this is several paragraphs, three,
uh-huh.
maybe. Another format that you could use is you could bullet point. You could describe your project and then put bullet points beneath it that describe exactly what you want to do. And maybe you decide that you want to tell us step by step how you're going to do that.
hmm
But what would be nice in the project description is for you to be able to explain the who, what, when, where, why that we talked about earlier in those that character limit. So once you've kind of built on that, note that in the project description, we already know who you are because you told us that earlier in the application. So now you can move into what, when, where, why, with an emphasis on why. Don't forget the why because the why is compelling to the reviewers and they want to know how this will help you. And in particular, the Echo Fund review process is really interested in, boy, look, this person is doing a great job. But boy, if they had a promo reel, if they had a video, if they were able to finish that album, this would really level them up. It's they're trying to really help improve your career. That's why this grant program is really for people who've already been established, um, and have a little bit of a established presence in the music scene. Um, can you click on your? Can you click move a little lower?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. On your timeline, this can be general, but understand that Music Oregon and Renee have a responsibility to the city to ensure that they account for the successful completion of these grants. And so, laying out your timeline and recognizing that there are limitations to when the activities can take place and when they need to finish, which in this case is going to be August 1 of next year. So just kind of like putting that in there. Let's say it was my application and I wanted to do a video. I'd want to film in November. I want to have the filmmaker get my rough cut back to me by the end of the year. I want to be ready to publish by April. Just making sure that you lay out all the steps is helpful. And if you could scroll down just a little more.
hmm
There's more of your why and how does this help you grow creatively? And then,
Notice I only did 439 characters on that, but I finished the question. So just FYI.
awesome.
So
And then this one, Renee, if you could just describe a little bit more about where we were coming from on identity and uh, how people could respond to this. What are some examples of ways that someone could respond.
Yeah, this is a chance for you to tell a little bit more about yourself outside of your bio, and not just about yourself, but about your art, what it means to you. And so we want you to approach it with, okay, so tell us like a story about yourself that relates to why you're doing this. Why is this meaningful? Trying to think of an example. So in my example here, we're talking about how, we want to have this promo reel to capture the counterculture of artistry and queerness in David Bowie's music as that we identify in our own identities. So something that why we connect to this project. We're not just doing this for money. We're not doing this, for followers on Instagram or something like that. We're doing this because we actually identify with this music, and we want, and that's something. What's something? It's a chance for you to say something compelling about about this project. That in while whereas the other questions previously were basically like we're asking you facts. So here's where you get to say more about your project, say more about what drives you, and that is what I think people are gonna like really pay attention to and connect with when they read it.
Yeah. And a marginalized, any kind of marginalized community too. It's a good spot to really talk about if there have been any challenges to you in terms of your reach or your capacity to do what you need to do. Another thing though, I'll give you an example of what I might put in there. I might say, I am a person who is a roots Americana performer, um, who wants to show a new, more modern approach to country music and what that means, and maybe dispel some of the stereotypes that are attached to country and Western music. And I play the washboard, and it's a highly, Latin instrument, even though people would stereotype it as sort of Andy Griffith. But, sort of being able to kind of define, stand out, and explain to people like what motivates you to be who you are, is really beneficial. Um, so quickly, why don't we go through the components of the budget? We've simplified the budget process this year. And Renee can describe that for you real quickly, and then we'll open it up for questions. And Cole Scott, you're on deck. I'm going to answer your question in just a moment.
Mhm. Yeah, so we made it a lot easier this year. We want you to be able to just basically write a breakdown of what you're spending your money on, with a description of each item that you're purchasing to support the cost. So what I did is put in, first of all, you're going to state what the total amount of funds you're seeking here, and you're going to go through and write a description. You have a little more space than it shows. Um, you'll say, I need this board recording that costs 75 at the venue here at the Starman Theater I made up. And then the next part of this is the Black Star Productions is mixing the 10 songs they're recording. That's 1500. So I'm listing each person, each vendor that I'm paying, and and the cost of that. Now, I don't. This doesn't mean you have to know exactly what that is, or even the vendor, I should say. You need to just. But what you do need is a realistic cost for what you're looking for. So if you're saying I need to mix one song for a single, and then you say that costs $5,000 at some, in your item description as a recording studio, people that are on the panel are not going to fund that, because you can definitely get a song done for less than $5,000. Unless maybe you're Taylor Swift and have that budget or something, but that's not in our independent music community. That's not realistic. So do some research. That's really important. Do research on what you were trying to buy. Ask a few people, and you can put something a little more generic, like if you don't know, if you haven't chosen what you're going for, say graphics for my CD. You don't have to put from Crave Dog or something like that. And then put the estimated cost, a realistic cost for what you're going to do there. So prove to us that you've done your research. And then write down the line items.
It's so much simpler than it used to be. The first round, at least, maybe several others, we required everyone to nail down the vendor. And it leads us directly into Cole Scott's question, which involves you will not be penalized if the vendor you use is from out of state, but people who use vendors from here locally get more points on their application,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. But you won't be penalized, and your application will definitely be considered. And in your case, let me just read this so in case in the video, so other people later that are watching this can know what you
Hmm.
asked.
Good
So
point.
Cole Scott asks, will we be penalized if the vendor we use for the project happens not to be local? They will be applying to get help covering the cost of an instrument that is being made in Connecticut, but will be used for shows and projects in PDX. So the answer to that question is we prefer local vendors. You won't be penalized, but people who use local vendors get more points. Another, Megan says that your bio, Renee, has a lot more character than a typical bio, in her
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, we have some fluff in our bio for sure. But also it kind of, there's you can make your bio fun. It doesn't have to just be straight facts. I mean, not saying you put lies in there or anything, but I'm saying, yeah, don't worry about that. Just, a good bio. Do you have anything to say about what a good bio has actually, Missy? That would be good to.
Oh, I go round and round about bios, but
Mhm.
I I am a who, what, when, where, why person, and I believe I mean, my bio is basically based on that whole concept that people want to know who I am, and they're sort of looking for, like, people read a bio because they want to know how they can use you, you know. So a lot of it is just making sure that I'm clear enough, to making sure that what I say is clear enough, but also brags a little without looking like I'm overstating who I am. And you can get a feel for that. I mean, if you've been doing music, you've probably had to do bios, and you know what a bio looks like that's kind of silly, or is clearly overstating things. Um, Another question that we had is, on average, how many people typically apply for these grants per round? We're expecting 350 to 400 people this time.
Yeah, we're not sure. Last year was 217, and this year, because we have the city funding added to what we're doing, we have more funding to go around. And because of their promotions, we're expecting a lot more. So it's hard to say, but that's about what we think.
It's a lot. There's more money though.
Yes,
So,
right.
but I mean, the more people we have apply, the more capacity to continue to receive money from local government to make sure this thing continues to happen.
Um, yeah. Any other? I thought there were more questions, but I guess that's all we've had so far. Does anyone else have other questions? I'm gonna stop
We
sharing for now, but
And what can we put the tips on writing grants back up just real quick?
sure thing. Yeah, you get that. Find that screen.
I hope you guys are getting something out of this. I mean, I may have made some assumptions, but I find writing, I don't know what it is. Like, you know how when you're writing a song, um, it's so personal, and you know when it's going to flow, and you just sit down and I mean, well, that's the way I write. But I feel like grants are so daunting, and it can really, like, mess with your mind, where you start to sort of think in an imperialist way, and that's not what we're into with Echo Fund. I mean, we're really, really trying to make this to where you have a process that is accessible. So the last couple of things is to make sure that you try to set a deadline for yourself to submit a few days early, and also try to ask questions um, at least a few days early, at least, so that we don't run right down to the deadline and then don't have the capacity to to fully spend time with you. Make sure you save your work after the fact. So that draft narrative, hold on to that. Hold on to your backup research regarding your budget. You never know if somebody might have a question, but your draft narrative is the draft narrative that will be valuable to you when you apply for a grant with another program. Much of what we ask, RAC asks for.
Hmm.
So hold on to all this hard work because, again, like grant writing is sort of like being a librarian. Once you get the stuff written and you keep it updated every year, then you're just going and pulling the info and then being able to craft it for different funders.
I want to say one more thing about trying to submit at least a few days early. Hot tip, part of the reason is that because of technology. So our good grant system works great. That's not what I'm saying. But I have had people at the day after it's due panicking because their internet went down or something like that at the very last minute. We cannot accommodate that. So I would just start to just put the grant deadline on the 17th instead of the 19th for you in your head. Make sure that you can actually submit it so that your technology is working. We are not granting extensions for those reasons, for technology reasons, unless it's on our end for any reason. But I'm just saying, that's another really good reason to try to do it early. So,
Okay, we've got some questions.
yeah.
Jackie Fitzgerald. So, what if we have a couple of local producers we're interested in working with for mastering, but we don't know who because we're still wrapping up the mixing phase? Is it okay to not know that level of detail? Yes, it's okay to not know that level of detail. And if you wanted to put, oh, it'll be one of these two producers. I like that. I think detail is really great if you can do it, but you can also do. We're hoping for these two. The main thing is getting an accurate estimation of what you think it's going to cost. It doesn't have to be perfect, but give it a ballpark because people who are reading this, as Renee said, they know what it costs to do this sort of thing. So it's important for you to do your homework. Um, Jackie, does that answer your question? Okay, next we have JJ Gal, and I imagine the application in our EPK will be somewhat repetitive. Is there a specific object we should have in mind for the EPK versus the grant, or is some repetition all right? Repetition is all right. Your EPK will probably will lean more on the side of visuals and maybe press coverage. Renee, do you have anything to add about that?
I really wouldn't worry about that. If you're uploading an EPK, that's optional anyway. So the important thing is that the grant application has the information it's asking for. If your EPK ends up echoing that, that's fine. So.
Awesome. Give us a little thumbs up when we've answered your question, or just pop back into the chat room and we'll answer it that way. Okay, we have Leda Gwen. Hopefully I pronounced your first name correctly. Knowing that having local vendors contribute to more points for scoring, what are other factors that will help us stand out as applicants and score more points? I'm going to let Renee take that one, and then I might riff off of you.
I'm just reading it one more time. What are the other factors that will help us stand out as applicants, score more points? Well, there are the other things that we are scoring on is, let me think. Y'all put me on the spot a little bit. So local vendors is just one of four reasons that we're scoring, or well, it's not, it's categories we're scoring under. Um, Let me pull that up real quick. Hang on. I might have to stop sharing for a second just so I can answer that. But
While she's looking for that, I mean, one of the things that the reviewers are looking for is, does it level up the artist? In other words, is this an artist that really, it's easy to see how this would just move you into a better position in one way or another. Maybe you really need that album to be finished, or you really need that video, or that's one thing that reviewers care about. Also, the reviewers look at people who come from groups that have been marginalized, discriminated against in our town. So that too can be, I would definitely focus on that. If you've experienced an inability to be able to access audiences, that would be that would be something that reviewers would give weight to.
Actually,
Renee?
actually, we do not score on that. So I'm just saying that's not something that's part of our scoring. However, we are, that is it. We part of Music Oregon's mission is to serve marginalized communities. So just keep that in mind. It's not part of our scoring though. So
And we have Jetty James. Will the Echo Fund award partial requests or will the whole thing be dismissed? No, it won't. For example, if I ask for 10,000, would Echo Fund say up to 5,000 or would they toss the whole request? They will not toss the whole request, but you should ask for up to 5,000. If you want to let the Echo Fund know that you're asking for half of a $10,000 project, do that. It won't be dismissed. Renee, am I?
yeah, to be clear, we are going to be looking through the data for when it asks you how much you're applying for. It has to say $1,000 to $5,000 in that space that says that. So your budget should add up to no more than $5,000. So please don't put 10,000. You're going to want to put up to 5,000 or it might be disqualified, okay? I just want to make sure that's clear. It doesn't mean that like if you do have a $10,000 recording project for some reason, then but you can apply for $5,000 of that towards that budget. So just make sure your budget includes whatever is in there, and then you can make a mention in another part of the grant application saying, "I'm applying for this phase of the recording process." My suggestion on that too is don't say we're paying for half of the mixing. I think it would what we want to see is that you can finish this product. And so the point being like pick like a couple phases of your project that you want to apply for that you can complete and apply for that. And so don't say half of the album and don't be specific. We would love to say like we want you to be able to report later that you've finished, this sort of I guess what's the word I'm trying to look for, Missy? That
Oh,
you've actually
yeah. Here's a way to look at it. Um, let's say that you're you're trying to finish an album. I mean, that's the point. And maybe you ask the Echo Fund for the cost of mixing your album.
yeah.
Um, it it's really about fully funding an activity that moves this thing forward. Um, although it doesn't cost $5,000 to do a song, it can cost well over $5,000 to do a full length album. So just kind of your budget needs to narrow itself down to the activities that can be funded under that 5,000. Remember too that an attractive proposal can be less than 5,000. In fact, in the past, I have seen our reviewers get really excited about somebody that comes in and they're like, I need $1,500. Here's exactly what I need it for. This is how it will level me up. And boom, that one moves. That particular proposal just moves because it's an easy, like, yes for the reviewers. So don't be afraid of asking for less than 5,000.
Yeah. I just posted the scoring criteria so you can see the 4 categories we have. Benefit to the applicant. Number 2, sorry, it kind of posted a little bit oddly formatted, apologize. Impact of the Echo Fund Award. Will it make a significant contribution to the project? Which speaks to what you were asking too. Like the project can be bigger than 5,000, but please only apply for 5,000 for this. So thank you, Dan. And then number 3, demonstrated planning and preparation. And then number 4, are the vendors, contractors local and stuff like that. So, yeah. I did answer Dan. Merch is not fundable, but CDs, vinyl, cassettes are. Those are under duplication. So yes, you can get a grant for that.
Jackie says, when will we know who is selected? Great
Oh,
question.
so all that information is on the Echo Fund page on our website. I'll go ahead and write the URL. I don't know why it wants to correct me on that, but here we go. /Echo Fund
So
guidelines.
while she's doing that, the application process closes on the 19th. So,
Yeah,
um,
so we will announce award, I believe it's November 15th that we'll be announcing people, the winners. Um, and then the money will be dispersed by December 9th. This is on my memory, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on that. Um, I saw that Brendan had a question about if you ask for $5, can you end up with $3? No, actually, in the past, this is another change. I don't think I told Missy, but we made a change so we are not partially funding projects anymore. We are going to always, if we pick your project, we're going to fully fund it. So,
Megan asks a really good question. Where do we find out info on what is required if we are granted the funds, proof of progress, receipts, that sort of thing? That there's a whole process for that that happens at the award. So when you're notified, then you'll be given an email that describes exactly what we need from you in order to process the funding, and then kind of lays out the process of progress. And I
yeah.
mean,
Sorry, go ahead.
that may have changed since I did a lot of babysitting the first round of Echo Fund, but now it's changed a little bit, right, Renee?
Yeah, sorry, you kind of cut out when you said that.
Uh, Probably because a crow was screaming in my ear. I just said I did a lot of babysitting the first round, and I don't think it's the case anymore that that you're bothering people too much. But the
Bothering what exactly?
question has to do with the proof of progress and receipts. Like where do they find out what's required of them if
Oh,
they receive
gotcha.
an
Okay.
award?
Okay, yeah, sorry. I just was a little bit, I didn't quite follow. I apologize. That actually there are details on what those grant guidelines or the, I guess grant reporting guidelines are. If you go to the link that I provided under the Echo Fund guidelines page, there is a link if you scroll down a little that says to download the application and the grant reporting basically. It says download a PDF of the 2024 application guidelines and questions here. In that link, if you download that, at the end, it talks about what the reporting requirements are. So, and yeah.
I know a lot of people have a hard stop, and thank you for your patience. My email address, I'm going to just drop it right here. If anyone needs any help, I'm not a reviewer, and I'm not an employee, and I'm not on the board of Music Oregon or Music Portland. So if you want to reach out to me, and maybe I could just take a look at your application or whatever and help you, I'm more than willing to do that. But I need you to do it earlier than the deadline because I get under pressure too, and I've got grants that I'm writing for other people. Not for
Uh,
this, not for Echo Fund. I'm not writing anybody's grant for Echo Fund. I'm just helping.
and I left my email as well on there, contact@musicoregon.org if you have any questions about the application or anything. Please reach out. So, thanks everyone. I think we'll wrap up, and we'll post this also on the Music Oregon site and send this out to the list that we sent this out to earlier. So,
Thanks so much.
all right, have a good one, everyone.